All right, Coach Anthony, can you talk a little bit about how you became involved with Hoops for Hope?
Sure. So in 1995, um, living out here in Amagansett, New York, I ran into an old schoolmate of mine who's a bit younger than I, who had been going over to Africa as I had been going over to Africa as well for two different reasons. I was working with on a project with homeless and runaway youth in South Africa, and Mark Crandall, who is the founder of Hoops for Hope, um, had been going back over to Zimbabwe, where he'd gone to high school as a Rotarian student when he was your age, actually. He was 15, 16.
Hmm.
And he spent a year over in Zimbabwe. He fell in love with it. And just like I had fallen in love with it in my travels in Africa. And that summer of 95, we met up and we started talking about an idea he had about using basketball as a way to convene youth, kids, to provide HIV and AIDS education in particular. At that time, the HIV and AIDS crisis was massive in Africa, and there was not a lot of preventive work being done. So we wanted to provide an opportunity for kids to play basketball, have a good time, feel like they were know that they were in a safe environment, and at the same time being able to provide some real hands-on tools about understanding HIV and AIDS, and prevention and what it is and what it isn't, et cetera. So working with a lot of the local nonprofit NGOs in Zimbabwe, they were able to work with us to come down and on a fairly regular basis throughout the year, provide that type of education and training for the kids and for our coaches as well. So that's really when it started, that summer of 1995.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting. Also, something that is super interesting is how you're using basketball. Like when we've had these conversations in the past, basketball is a metaphor of how to approach life.
Yeah.
I know Hoops for Hope is really big on the same like Ubuntu, like I am because we are and all that. And of course, that's now reached the NBA and has become like a very known word in the
Mhm.
basketball community. But I'm interested to see how like you think that manifests itself and how basketball is a great metaphor for life and how that kind of lives on through the Hoops for Hope Foundation.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And so Ubuntu, as you said, I am because we are. So I know that alone, I can be successful, but as a group, more will be successful. And uh, when you think about a team, if you think about a community, if you think about your own sports teams, et cetera, um, it's rare that one person alone can lead a team always to victory. It does take a team, number one. Number two, the thing about basketball, as I think it's true in other sports as well, but basketball has a very unique way of defining uh, how people play on the court and knowing a specific skill set that he or she might have, right? So take me, for instance. I knew that if I dribbled 5 times, that was enough.
Mhm.
I needed to give that ball up because I didn't have a handle. What I needed to do was move without the ball. And what did that do? That allowed me to see an entire court and know where I could position myself to the betterment of the team trying to score a basket or when we're playing defense. There's a book called How Basketball Can Save the World by a professor from NYU, and anybody who's watching this should really check it out because in there he really lays out a real set of principles about how basketball can do this. And he teaches this course at NYU, and it's the most popular course in all of NYU.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to take it, and the reason is it's a really great leadership model. So the selflessness that a basketball player can have um, over time can really, support a team to be as successful as they want to be. You can go through, from Michael Jordan on down, even Michael Jordan, who wanted to be able to shoot and score quite a bit, over time, if you saw The Last Dance, and I know I'm being a little romanticizing here, but there were certain times when that ball had to be moved into a different player, and he started to understand that more. And certainly the way Phil Jackson worked with that team, that even though they didn't use the word Ubuntu, that triangle offense was really a big part of that. So when we think about basketball as a game itself, you have players that do have specific roles. And like I said earlier, it's just so important to know what you can do and what you can't do. You always want to get better, mind you, but if I have a skill set like I know I don't handle well, let's say you do, I want to help you be as successful as you can. And it's one way for a basketball team to think about. It's another for how a school might want to think about, what can each person do to lead to the greater success of the overall school. A family can do that. So it's something that we really try to hold true to, because the natural instinct is the word I, and we is a lot stronger. That's a bond that's very different. But if I bring the best me into that, we're going to be pretty, at least we'll know that we've given everything we have, to it, and we can be proud of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you talk about like the type of leadership basketball brings out in people. And I'm just wondering, is there any like specific successes that you've had with this program or foundation, either Zimbabwe or South Africa so far, that you can kind of
I
talk about?
think I think the biggest successes, and I think it's very important to understand the context in which the kids that we work with grow up in. They grow up in extremely underserved communities. And what I mean by that is right now you could get a ride to go play basketball. That's not possible over in Zimbabwe, and it's certainly in the townships in Cape Town in South Africa. So the the fact that each year about 75% of the kids from the year before keep coming back is a miracle.
Mhm.
Number one. Number two, that they play most of the time on courts that you would go, how do they play on those courts? And how are they having such a great time out there with not the best basketball, some of them without sneakers, but they want to play. So those are massive successes because they enjoy the game, they enjoy being with their friends, and they enjoy being with our coaches. As far as skill set goes and being better basketball players, if they become better basketball players, great. They most of the time when they start with us, they're in the what we would consider the sixth grade, fifth or sixth grade. They've never touched a basketball in their lives.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, they're playing a game that, they might have played soccer beforehand or maybe, touch rugby. Some of the girls might have played netball. But as far as playing basketball, it's very rare that some of the kids have already played, number one. And then the second part of that is that, the at the end of the day, um, the better players, we are able to recognize them and point them in the direction of potentially joining a club team.
Mhm.
And once we've done that, from a basketball perspective, obviously we're pleased. The thing that we're most pleased about, though, is if we're able to help them develop the life skills that we, impart upon them on a regular basis, because that they're going to need more than anything else to be able to, continue in high school, hopefully, and be able to get some type of employment. At the end of the day, these kids want to be able to be providers for their families. They want to be able to, move out of the poverty that 100% of these kids live in. In South Africa, most of those kids live in tin shacks. That they get to school is a miracle, and in Zimbabwe, it's not too dissimilar. Um, so it's, the success stories from a basketball standpoint, there are a few of them have gone on to play for the national teams. Um, and that's great, but it's because we were able to identify certain kids that they would benefit from a higher level of coaching than we can provide, and they needed to be able to play with a better caliber of player. And there's a few girls that have really been able to do that. And there's a couple of girls in South Africa right now that, are not only they're aging out of our program, but they're definitely their skill set warrants them to be at a higher level. So we try to help them as much as possible to be able to access that higher level of competition.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Final question here is obviously we're talking about sponsoring a coach out in the winter season from South Africa to kind of just see what basketball is like and the similarities and dissimilarities and how like the culture perceives basketball and what it means here. Uh from someone who works for Hoops for Hope, what do you intend to like get out of this experience, or what do you think this experience will bring to the program as a whole?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and we're so grateful for the opportunity to you and your family for that, and thank you again. What we're hoping for, and what I've talked to Azza, who is the coach who's going to become, or what I've talked about is, um, there's a variety of things. From the basketball standpoint, it's obviously basic drills, time management. Um, what does fitness really mean for a player? How to facilitate, you know, potentially some very tricky situations where, the team just isn't responding to a certain coaching style on that day, let's say, or how to talk to a player who's in a slump, how to talk to a player who's doing great, but maybe, he or she is not passing the ball when there are certain opportunities to do that. Um, so that's the first thing. It's really for him to get comfortable with how to really run a practice, certainly for more qualified, higher quality player. Let's use that term,
Right.
or a better skill set. And how to understand when a team has really begun to understand a certain concept or a certain play or a certain style of play, and then being able to potentially introduce other things to it. So it's really kind of building on that. The biggest thing is all the new knowledge that he gains is how does he bring that back to the other coaches that we have? Because it's one thing for him to garner all that knowledge, and he has quite a bit to begin with. But I really see Ozza being a person who can become a rise to another level in Hoops for Hope, and that's why he was chosen to do this. Um, so that's really what we're looking for. I mean, obviously the experience of coming to America, being able to spend time in the environment that you all will be providing for him is absolutely tremendous opportunity. And then how does he bring that new knowledge back over to our coaches as well, so that they can be even better coaches for the kids that they're working with?
Right. Yeah, and I hope this is like the first experience that we could do of this of many. Yeah,
We do
hopefully.
too. We do too. We're very excited about it.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate
Thank you.
this interview.
Thank you so, so much.